Hi everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. This one is from Monday, May 4th, all the way through to Sunday, May 10th of 2020. And this week we have a powerful shift in the energy that's going to be impacting us for the next 18 months. We have the nodes shifting finally out of Cancer and Capricorn and moving into their new phase, their new transit in the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius. And so what we're going to be experiencing is the North Node shifting from the nurturing, home-oriented sign of Cancer, and when the North Node is in any sign, it sort of expands on the energy or the associations of that sign in excess. A lot of really good developments and a lot of growth can come in that area, but sometimes it can be a little over the top, and oftentimes it can be a little over the top. And so, one of the things that we've been seeing at the tail end, the most concentrated point of this energy of the North Node's transit through Cancer, is like a very literal overkill of being at home, right? Cancer rules the home, property. It rules things like family and our associations with family. It also can rule things like our emotional experience, or it has that association with emotion and emoting. And so people have been feeling more emotional, a little bit more touchy. People have been expressing their emotions a little bit more freely. And there's also been a very strong pull toward home, family, that type of thing. And so we have this energy here where, we've been forced to be at home. And I think that's a very literal example of the excesses of the North Node, or the challenges or the problems that can come about with the North Node in the sign of Cancer, or in any sign, really. It's like too much of a good thing, and then it just becomes overkill. And then you kind of have to rein it back in, take it back, kind of go into that South Node area, go back to work, something like that. But anyway, we're shifting out of that energy. That will actually come back around in June and July during the eclipse season. It's going to be the final eclipse cycle where we'll have that Cancer Capricorn energy, even though the North and South nodes will be in Gemini and in Sagittarius respectively. We'll still be getting the final eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn, and that'll be kind of the last chance to kind of rebalance those areas of life associated with Cancer and Capricorn. And of course, we'll talk about that more when the time comes, when the summer comes and we have these eclipses. But I did actually speak pretty in depth about this with Robert Phoenix in our donation-based webinar we did just a couple of weeks ago, and that's still available. So you can donate whatever you can afford, and the link for that is down in the description below. It's like a 3.5-hour webinar where we went into the mundane astrology and what we see happening on more of a global scale, the historical precedent for what we're experiencing right now astrologically, and what things might look like in the next year or so. And so you can, again, find that down in the link in the description below. We do get a little controversial in this webinar, so just kind of be aware of that. If you're not familiar with Robert's work, maybe familiarize yourself before you dive in, because, it gets a little crazy sometimes. But it was a fun webinar. It was really good, and a lot of really important information was covered. So I highly recommend checking that out if you're interested in understanding more of the global impact of this shift in the nodes, because we focus on that pretty heavily. And in terms of the way that this is going to shift our perspective and shift our direction, the course that we're taking on a more global, more societal level, is actually, I think it's going to be positive, especially at the very beginning of this. We have a lot of energy in Gemini this summer, especially at the beginning of the summer, but really all summer long, because we have the North Node shifting into Gemini. We have Venus, which is going to be stationing very quickly, very soon, in Gemini to go retrograde, and it's actually going to be in Gemini all the way through to August. So we have this very extended period of Venus in Gemini because of the retrograde cycle. And so a lot of Gemini themes are going to be very predominant. And over the next year and a half, I think there's going to be a shift in focus beginning right now on things that are local, on building and expanding on and establishing community in your own immediate environment. That is a very Gemini thing, right? It's about your neighbors, your neighborhood, getting to know the people around you, especially with that Venus energy, right? Venus in retrograde. You know your neighbors, but do you really know them? You know your community, but do you really have established connections within your immediate community? These are things that we're going to start to kind of shift our focus toward. Also, things like local businesses and reestablishing a local economy and a local supply chain, especially, I think is going to be an important manifestation of this energy that I think we should all contribute to, because I think that's going to help us to ride this wave and to, come out the other side successful and without as much harm as, could happen, because the supply chain is breaking down. We know that, right? And so a lot of these things are going to be really important for small businesses. This Gemini energy, I think, is going to actually help prop up small local businesses for a time. I don't think that, businesses should continue on just as they were and expect things to be normal again, though. So kind of learning to adapt, which we talked about in that webinar too. But I do think that this is going to be a time where building community, focusing on your immediate environment, networks in your immediate environment will be especially important. Different forms and different ways and outlets for communication will start to be developed throughout this time period, and you'll see a lot of that. There'll be a lot of grassroots movements to communicate more effectively, even when you're not able to be near a person, because Gemini is communication. It's like radio, podcasts. It's the way that we email, text message, exchange information with other people. That's going to be changing, and there's going to be a lot of new innovative things coming out. And I think a lot of that's going to be in response to a lot of the censorship that we're experiencing right now as well, and a lot of the chaos too. Like any mainstream media outlet, any social media outlet that you kind of log on to right now, it's like, it's insane. Like there's just insanity going on. So it's kind of hard to keep up with what's happening and to know what the truth is. And I think that's going to increase too. It's like almost like there's too much communication, and we're already starting to feel that at the onset, the transitional period between the North Node in Cancer and the North Node in Gemini. It's like there's conflicting information, doublespeak, that type of thing with that Gemini energy, that duality. There are two sides to everything, and it's unclear which side is the truth. And we're going to be seeing more of that too. But on a positive note, we can take hold of this, right? We can take hold of this in terms of growth and development in our own lives in the Gemini area of our charts, which we'll talk about as we get into the forecast for all 12 signs. We can take hold of this by expanding on and moving into Gemini themes, which are related to communication, ideas, curiosity, sharing information, connecting with people, socializing in new and exciting ways. This is kind of an energy where you have to do things in your own way. You have to do things in a new way. And so there will be new developments in these areas. And it could be, again, overkill too. A flood of communication, too much coming in all at once. And this is also more of a focus on, first off, education. So I think there's going to be major changes in the educational system, which we're already starting to see the preliminary kind of components of that. So especially if you are somebody who is an educator, this is going to be impacting you because of the societal influences. And even if you're not somebody who's an educator, you might start to think about wanting to do online courses and things like that in case there is a circumstance or a shutdown again. And because, throughout this year, things are not going to go back to normal. So this is kind of what we're seeing here. So there's going to be a lot of new developments in innovation in education. I think anyone who teaches courses that are more like practical skill sets, because people are going to be looking for things they can use in a valuable, practical way in the here and now. I think if you're already doing that, you're ahead of the curve with this Gemini energy. If you already have a good community and a good connection with your community, you're ahead of the curve with this Gemini energy. And so those things are going to be important. What we're going to be moving away from are these international connections. I would say it's pretty obvious that international trade and the international supply chains are going to be disrupted. They already have. And so we're going to be moving we're going to be moving away from this sort of globalized way of going about our lives where we're traveling here and there for conferences and for work and for pleasure. There's going to be a lot less travel, internationally, not just now, but over the next year and a half. And the last time we had this energy was right after 9/11. And so, of course, travel through airplanes, it was really kind of, there was a damper was put on that, right? People weren't traveling as much. They had to do a lot of overhaul with the travel system, and, the TSA happened and all these things. And so we'll see more stuff like that, like the restrictions on travel and the way that we deal with airline travel is absolutely going to change. You can already see the precursors to that. We don't know exactly how it's going to change, but we can, venture a few guesses involving, temperatures being taken, screenings for symptoms, having to wear masks, things like that. We're going to see more of that. So not only will we have to deal with the TSA and, making the decision if we want to be irradiated or get that pat down and, having that risk of having to be searched and having to be late for your flights and things like that. We're also going to have, I think, additional screening measures. And even when things open back up and travel is allowed, even like on the international level, I think people are going to be traveling a lot less. And there's also going to be fear of like getting stuck somewhere because of a lockdown. So we're going to be less global when it comes to our focus and more local. And I think that's actually a really powerfully positive thing, because what we really need is to establish community, to establish local supply chains, local sources of food and other items that we use on a day-to-day basis. So that way, when the supply chain is disrupted, and as we're going through this transitional phase when it comes to the way that we go about, our farming and agricultural practices, which are changing and which I predicted, a long time ago would be changing during Uranus and Taurus. As we're going through this, we won't be, as harmed by it. So this is something that I think is positive. I think it's needed. And I think that, focusing more on, local trade, local communities, local governments, what's going on a grassroots local level is going to be a big theme. And I like that about this energy, and especially with that Venus energy too. It's going to be more of a positive thing about making, good interpersonal connections at a community level. The other thing too that I would say about this energy is that, because people won't be traveling as much on this like global level, people still want to get out and about and they want to get away. And so, Gemini rules vehicles. It rules short distance trips. I think you're going to see a lot more people, purchasing like camper vans and RVs and things like that. That's already been a huge movement. I think that's going to be increased. I think people are going to be taking shorter, smaller trips as opposed to international travel, and doing more like day trips and things like that within their immediate environment or close to their immediate environment. And so that's something that can be, a good thing as well. This is also an energy that has to do with extended family. So, looking at your family connections in terms of not just your parents and all of that and your family lineage through your parents, it's looking at those other connections with your siblings, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, and sort of reinforcing and reestablishing those connections as well, if that's something that you've lost sight of in the past. So, a lot of good connections can be made, basically, is what I'm saying. And innovations in media and in news, innovations in travel, also innovations in delivery and the way that we go about receiving mail, because that's part of this. Commerce is going to obviously change, because that's a Gemini thing too, like merchants and things ruled by Mercury that have that association with Gemini. But a lot of this is going to be changing the way that we communicate, and a lot of this is going to be a shift in communication from an international level to a local level, and a shift in travel from an international level to a local level, a shift in trade from an international level to a local level, and I think it'll happen pretty quickly over the next year and a half. And so that's the big energy for right now, and I know this is kind of an extended intro, but this is an important shift, and we're in very important transitionary times, and so I feel like it's it's, something that's worthwhile to discuss a little bit further than I normally would. I'm considering doing a webinar, like a donation-based webinar, about kind of dealing with business and finance and career in the sort of new economy and what we're kind of moving into over the next couple of years. And so if that's something you're interested in, please comment down in the description below, because some of this content of what I'm just saying, I could very much elaborate on and get into a lot more detail and make it more specific, in addition to all the other things that are going on, because things are getting crazy. This year is going to continue to be crazy. Next year is still kind of crazy. So it's not something that's necessarily going to completely lift anytime soon. And there are major changes going on. Like, things are going to change pretty dramatically, as they already are. Okay, so that being said, there's a smaller sort of significant event happening this week, which is the full moon in the sign of Scorpio. And so the moon is technically, at its fall in Scorpio. It's not necessarily the best energy for our emotions and expressing them appropriately. Usually when you have the moon in Scorpio, you'll see people bottling up emotions, being more suspicious or distrustful, or sensitive to betrayal or humiliation, and so they don't necessarily let things out. But when they do, it's like, where did that come from? That is over the top, that's crazy, that's extreme, right? And so we're already seeing a lot of that. So we might see more of that, especially because the moon is going to be close to its perigee on the time that it goes, or at the time of the full moon. And so one of my teachers, Lynn Coyner, refers to these types of full moons as crisis full moons, crisis lunations, things like that, because it tends to bring emotional extremes and sort of extreme situations where people get really upset. And so, that it's already in Scorpio. I actually like the moon in Scorpio. It really depends on your personal chart. Like, I'm a Scorpio rising. I have my Pluto in Scorpio, but it's really nice. It's like my best planet, one of my best planets. And so, moon in Scorpio, I always feel really passionate, really intense, really energized, lit up about something. I usually feel like powerful during the full moon in Scorpio, but that's not going to be the case for everyone, obviously. And so we'll get into that a little bit for all 12 signs. However, this is actually, I think, a nicer full moon in Scorpio, despite it being sort of a crisis full moon and being a really intense, powerful energy. On that emotional level. It's also going to be in a really nice trine with Neptune in Pisces. And so it's bringing out some of the better energy of the Neptunian side of things, which is dreams, visions, impressions, spirituality, interconnectivity, creativity, compassion. And so I think this is like a really psychic full moon. Like, this is a full moon where if you want to tap in to these other dimensional realities, if you want to connect on levels that are unseen or that you're not normally able to connect through, this is a really powerful time for that. And so, when you're doing your full moon rituals or whatever it is that you do, this is a great time to tap into otherworldly energies, to tap into the unknown, to dive deeper, into meditation, contemplation, those types of things. I think that our intuition is going to be heightened, and we're going to be getting messages really intensely with this full moon. And so that's going to be part of our experience. And those messages and experiences will be specific and change between each person, but I think the things can come through pretty intensely. And so I do like that energy. I like that it softens up the energy that we've been experiencing with Venus and square with Neptune. It brings a level of clarity and understanding. It brings out the truth that maybe has been hidden or that we haven't been able to access quite as readily up until this point. And so that is a positive thing. So that full moon in Scorpio, I actually like it. I don't think it's going to be like a negative energy. I also like the fact that at the end of this week, Mercury is going to be coming into a trine with Pluto and Jupiter. So it's kind of lightening up the energy of that. And then Saturn's stationing to go retrograde on Sunday. So it is kind of like a busy week. Saturn's stationing to go retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. That's just going to be like a, amped up Saturn and Aquarius energy, which we talked about quite a bit already in my previous videos. And also I did a full video where I gave a forecast for all 12 signs for Saturn and Aquarius, as well as a sort of global outlook for that. And so you can find that link, or you can find that on my channel. So if you're subscribed to my channel, just hop on over there. The video's there, and I'll post a link down below too, because this is really just going to be an amplified energy of that, where we're going to see much more clearly in a bigger, more powerful way what Saturn is going to be challenging us to do, what Saturn is going to be bringing throughout its transit through Aquarius over the next couple of years. And so, you know, it's a kind of snapshot, like a moment in time sort of deal there. But I do like that Mercury's lightening up that Pluto-Jupiter conjunction and bringing out some of the positive expression of that. I'm not going to get into that too much in the forecast for all 12 signs, just because, you know, this is a lot of stuff. It's going to be a lot to already talk about. I'm going to focus on the main points here. But just know that this weekend is a little bit of it's a heavy and light energy at the same time. It's like certain things are lightening up and opening up and becoming very apparent and very clear to us. And it's almost like opportunities are opening up and we're able to make plans and to take hold of that and to understand it intellectually. And so that's part of the energy. But at the same time, Saturn is like really strong and really heavy in the sky. And so we're going to see what blockages and barriers that we might have to taking hold of these opportunities. So, you know, an opening up, but also an understanding that these things might take work, might take time, or there might be blockages in other areas of our lives, more likely, that might contradict this opening, right? So it's like opening up here, but kind of having to like barrel down over there, or kind of having to face some limitations and delays over there. So it's kind of an interesting mix of energies. But that's really what's going on here for all 12 signs, or not for all 12 signs, for the general influence. And so before I get into the forecast for all 12 signs, I do have just, I think, one quick announcement. I already mentioned the webinar with Robert that happened a couple of weeks ago, but I just wanted to remind you guys that my summer electional guide, which is going to be an in-depth guide for June, July, and August, where there's an electional calendar, which is also a lunar calendar that gives the best and worst days electionally for each month. And there's a written guide that goes into greater detail about the best days and, you know, how they can be utilized. And I also give specific times that are going to be best for certain projects, certain launches, certain relationship things, certain, you know, I have things for beauty treatments, real estate, a lot for business, because that's what a lot of people use electional for, career changes, all of that. And so in addition to that, there are webinars for each month that give additional detail and go kind of through the entire month. And so this is a huge offering. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, but I had to kind of make time for it and cut some things out to make it happen. And it's happening. And so that's going to be released next weekend on May 9th. And you still have 1 week to pre-order and receive 20% off this electional guide. And you can find that link down in the description below with all the details. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, one more thing, actually. On Monday, my series, Astrology 101, is going to premiere on Ickonic. I think they're premiering the first 3 episodes. And you can actually get a free 7-day trial subscription to Ickonic. So I'll post a link for that down in the description below. And so you can watch the first 3 and then decide if you want to stick with it, which I recommend because there's a lot of great content on there too. And so this is a series that I recorded right before the lockdown. They came out and filmed it with me in real time. It's really nicely edited. I'm excited about it, where we go through all sorts of different topics in astrology. It's kind of like a crash course in what astrology is, how it's used, and even certain techniques and things like that. So the link is down in the description below. And you know, I hope you guys want to watch that and see the full series, because I'm really excited about it personally, but that's because I'm the one that made it or helped make it at least. All right. So that is all of the things now. Let's get into the forecast, actually, for all 12 signs, beginning with Aries. Let me do some rearranging here. I haven't been doing things as I've been kind of changing my setup, and my desk is a little small, but we're almost done with my office renovations. And when we renovate that office, when it's finished, I'm going to have a big corner desk, so all my stuff isn't piled on top of everything, and it'll be a lot better, a lot cleaner. And I'm going to have actually a nice recording setup too, where I'm going to have a better camera and a better space for it, and it won't be as echoey either. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, so let's get into the forecast for all 12 signs. So for Aries and for Aries rising, how should I put this? I'll put this like this. So for Aries and for Aries rising, the north and south nodes are actually going to be shifting into your 3rd and your 9th house. And so you're shifting your focus from kind of developing family ties, developing your roots, focusing on changes, making changes. You probably have had some pretty dramatic changes related to your home, your family, your property, your place of living over the course of the last year and a half. And so your family dynamic might have changed, your home might have changed, your property might have changed in some way. Your relationship with your parents might have changed in some way. You might have added a new child into your life. You know, that could have been part of this too. So now we're kind of shifting gears. And so you're going to have the North Node in your 3rd house, which is the house of education, especially sort of learning practical skill sets. If you're somebody who's been thinking about teaching, this is a time where you might dive into that. This is a time where smaller, sort of more localized travel opportunities might come about for you. This is where you're going to be changing things when it comes to your mindset. So you're going to be learning and developing a lot of new information over the course of the next year and a half, and that's going to serve you in a lot of ways. And this is one of the best times to go back and get additional education, especially if it's something new and exciting that you've been feeling like you want to do, but you feel ambivalent toward it because it's like exciting but scary. So opportunities to do that and to take hold of that energy might come up for you in the next year and a half. You're going to kind of be moving away from focusing so much on what's going on out there in the world, the bigger picture, philosophizing things, focusing more on, practical skill sets, practical knowledge, smaller bites of information. If you're somebody who's into like writing, publishing, marketing, again, smaller content, smaller pieces of content, so like blogs and short stories are going to be more fruitful for you. You're going to be moving away from that big, grand kind of stuff like publishing a novel or something like that. There could be a lot of changes related to teaching and travel and relationships with people in foreign countries, and also some major changes in your community. This is a really great time to start focusing on establishing community, because that's something that is going to bring really powerful changes, and your relationships with your community might change in very dramatic, very fated, very synchronistic and powerful ways over the course of the next couple of years as well, without you even really having to do anything to make that happen. And so that's going to be part of it too. The full moon is actually happening in your 8th house. And so there could be some sort of developments related to money, finance, joint finances through marriage, debt, taxes, other people's money, that sort of thing. But this is also a really powerful time for healing, especially on an emotional or psychological level. And so doing something where you're tapping into that potential, right? Going and turning inward, doing some journaling, maybe finding, a counselor or something like that, doing some sort of shamanic type of work or healing, working on healing your inner emotional state. That's going to be first and foremost. But this is also a time where there's going to be a lot of like really powerful intuitive energy with that trine to Neptune in the 12th house in particular. This is a time where you can tap into a lot, and a lot can be revealed to you, especially related to power and control issues or deep-seated psychological issues, things from your past that you're holding on to that are controlling you from the inside out. And so a lot of this will be revealed, and a lot of the healing that needs to happen will become very clear for you. And so that's going to be one of the potentials here, but that you could like very literally just have a manifestation of like money coming in or something being resolved, or kind of reaching this point where you're seeing the opportunities that are coming about due to like paying off debts or an important investment that you made or something like that as well. All right. And then for Taurus and for Taurus rising. For Taurus, this energy of the shift of the nodes is actually happening with the North Node in Gemini. And so it's fairly common when the North Node shifts into your second house, like it will be, to see an increase in wealth and abundance and a lot of changes in your financial situation. There might be a few ups and downs, but usually it's going to kind of move in the direction of prosperity or an increase in your financial state, especially an increase in money that you create through your own hard work. Investments during this time might be a bit of a loss. Your partner might, not have as many resources coming in or something along those lines, but your resources can absolutely increase through your own efforts, your own hard work, and especially resources that come through, anything that's Gemini related, marketing, like creating a new marketing plan to increase your profits if you have a business, communication, even things like filling out applications for jobs and things like that, that could increase your wealth or your income potential, finding a financial advisor that you can communicate with that can help you to manage and handle your finances, those types of things. These are all things that are beneficial for you. The things that you're kind of moving away from are focusing on relying on other people's money. If you have debt, that's going to kind of, be a source of dissatisfaction and potentially stagnation. Like it kind of prevents you from focusing on developing your own savings, your own income, your own sort of body of wealth. And so this is something that you're going to be working hard on letting go of throughout this time. So working on releasing ties to past debts, ties to other people's financial situations. If you're managing somebody else's resources, you might start to realize that you need to let go of that, or it might kind of be taken away from you pretty abruptly during the eclipse cycles during this time. But if that does happen, that's not a bad thing. It's kind of like a relief, and it frees up energy. And so, good things for finance for Taurus coming up. And I think that is probably good news because Taurus, likes to have some security there. It's not necessarily going to be stable, but it's going to be growth, right? And so that's the good news there. This full moon is happening in your 7th house of relationships. This is a great time to bond in relationship with other people. This is a great time for romance. This is a great time to connect one-on-one in all sorts of close interpersonal relationships. This is a really great time to connect with friends and groups of people that you surround yourself with by choice, especially if you have strong spiritual bonds or creative connections with these people, because a lot of really powerful opportunities can come about, or powerful things can be revealed to you too about these relationships. And so you get a lot of clarity on, who has your back, who's supportive and compassionate toward you, and who you can trust and who's loyal throughout this time. All right. And then for Gemini and for Gemini rising, this energy with the North and South node is happening in your sign. And so you could expect a change in path, over the next year and a half, especially around the time where this hits your ascendant, and especially during the eclipse cycles. Your direction in life is going to be changing, and this is a time where you're going to be focusing way more on your needs and your self-interest and less on the needs and interests of others. This is a time where a lot of times relationships come in, and these relationships are really powerful. They can be really positive. Sometimes they're just coming in for a time for you to sort of unravel and work through some past karma from maybe a previous lifetime or something along those lines. But other times, these energies can be powerful in a more positive way, and they can be long lasting. Like you can connect with people either romantically or in terms of a close friendship or new partnership where it feels really familiar, it feels fated, it feels synchronistic, it feels karmic, it feels like it's meant to be, but it also feels like you already know these people, and you'll have more than one of these connections usually over the course of the next year and a half. And so it's kind of like strange and synchronous, and it's like, I feel like we know each other. I feel like we are meant to be meeting up and doing something together, but it's like, I don't understand how or why, I just know, right? It's that kind of thing. So you'll have these synchronistic sort of connections. And so that can be a part of this energy too. There can be major changes in your path, major changes in your relationships that are already in your life over the next year and a half. And so that's going to be starting really this week. The other thing that's going on is that there's a full moon in the sign of Scorpio, which is in your 6th house of work, health, and daily routines. Health issues can become very apparent and come to the forefront, and you can intuitively understand who to turn to in terms of authority figures that can help you to overcome these health issues. And also you can intuitively understand understand what you need for healing, especially on a psychological and emotional level, to contribute to your physical well-being. The other thing too that can come up is a lot of work. You might feel very busy. You're kind of being pulled out of your social distancing, isolation, solitude zone, and you're being forced back into the world. You're being forced to take care of the busyness of day-to-day life. This can actually benefit you in a lot of different ways. And this is a great time for visualizing things that you want to manifest with your day-to-day work routines, schedule, your career overall, and for creative projects and pursuits in your career. All right. And then for Cancer and for Cancer rising, I have like a holiday mug right now in the middle of, well, it's May now. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, the North Node is actually shifting out of your sign. And so this is a time for you to, let go of focusing on your own self-interest, your own goals, your own volition, the things that you need, want, and desire, developing the self, developing your goals, your direction in life. And this is a time where you're going to be spending a little bit more time in solitude, seclusion, kicking back. This is a time where you're going to have to let go of a lot over the next year and a half that maybe you've built or that you've attached yourself to, or maybe if you've overdone it when it comes to focusing on yourself, your self-interest, your needs, things of that nature. The North Node in Gemini can actually force you very intensely into periods of solitude and seclusion, but they're usually coming about in a way that's fated, that's meant to be. So this could, land you in a situation where you're going on some sort of spiritual retreat, or where social distancing or isolation is maybe a bigger thing for you than it is for other people over the course of the next year and a half, where you're spending more time in solitude, contemplation, and this is really going to help you to develop your spiritual awareness. But again, this is a time where you're going to be letting go of a lot of old baggage, old karma. A lot of things in your life are going to be kind of falling by the wayside, but you're going to feel really pulled toward letting things go. You're going to feel really pulled toward spending more time in seclusion and in isolation. It's not about developing the ego self anymore. It's about developing, your internal reality and your spiritual connection to everyone and everything, and your spiritual understanding of the world. So this can be a really creative time, a really contemplative time. There can be really sort of crazy circumstances involving 12th house and 6th house institutions that can come up over the next year and a half. And so you might be spending more time around the energy of hospitals, retreat centers, rehabilitation centers. You could be spending more time, engaged in activities involving like prisons, prisoners, involving people who are like in monasteries, ashrams, temples, things of that nature. But also, in the healthcare system in general, this is a big one for health and healthcare because you have the South Node in the 6th house of health. If you're somebody who hasn't been taking care of your health, this might force you into a period of rest, reprieve, solitude, seclusion, but it's going to be for a purpose. It's going to help you to kind of develop something new. This could be one of those times where you really have to focus more on your spiritual health in order to create physical health as a result. There might be something you're letting go of related to your day-to-day work routines, the day-to-day busyness of your normal life. There could be something that's unraveling when it comes to your work on a day-to-day basis, or your relationship with your coworkers or your employees. You might have to let some people go if you are somebody who runs a business or manages people over the course of the next year and a half, and that could be kind of difficult for you. That could be part of this too. I know this sounds kind of like dire with the Cancer rising people, but that's just because the 12th house and the 6th house are not easy energies. And so when they're activated by the North and South nodes, a lot of karmic, sort of fated, destined situations come into play that can feel quite difficult, but usually the end result is something positive that you might not expect. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind, because you can't usually see things clearly, especially with the eclipses. Like, you see some things happening, but the end result is usually eclipsed in some way, and you don't find out what that's going to be until later on. This is going to be kind of that energy throughout the year and into next year. The other thing that's happening this week is a powerful full moon, and this is the good news for Cancers because the full moon is happening in the sign of Scorpio in your 5th house, and this is the house of joy, of play, of pleasure, of fun, of spontaneity. And so this week in particular, especially near the 7th, which is when we have this full moon, it's a time for you to just go and have fun. Do things that you love to do. Do things that you're passionate about. Your passions will be revealed to you. You'll be able to kind of escape from reality through doing things that are fun and interesting. This is a great time for you to connect with your children, and that can be really fruitful and really fun for you. And so, this is a powerful time in a positive way, especially if you're a Cancer rising with your sun or moon, with your sun, moon, or rising near that 17th degree in the sign of Scorpio. This is actually going to be forming, I would say, anywhere from like 15 to 25 degrees, because this will be forming a grand trine with your sun, moon, or ascendant. And so this is a very feel-good energy, a very positive sort of experience where you're going to be able to act on your passions. You're going to feel more compassionate. You're going to feel just more dreamy, and things will feel good toward the end of this week for you. All right. And for Leo and for Leo rising, so for you guys, the North Node will be moving into your 11th house. And so this is a time where you're going to be focusing more on your group associations, and where a lot of really new fated karmic connections can come in with groups, organizations, new friendships especially can be very powerful and really predominant during this time, and they can kind of take you in a new direction in life. It's like you meet up with a group of people and you feel like you were meant to meet up with them, and it's really new and exciting, but you're a little ambivalent to go in this direction. Maybe they're a little different, eccentric, outside of your normal crew, and you kind of roll with it. And if you do, a lot of really powerful new developments can come in your life, and you can really change your path and change your direction in a lot of different ways. The South Node in the 5th house, you're kind of moving away from focusing on your own passions and self-interest and hobbies in favor of the group orientation, group work, what's best for the greater good of all humanity, that type of thing. However, a lot of talents and gifts that have been with you, since birth, like talents and gifts that you are carrying over maybe from a previous lifetime, can show up, and you can utilize those very easily and very comfortably, sort of like, it's just very familiar even though you've never done it before. So you might pick up a hobby over the course of the next year and a half, and it's like, oh, I feel like I've been doing this my whole life, or many lifetimes, right? And why am I so naturally gifted at this wonderful creative thing that I'm doing? And that can be part of this energy too. And so the North and South nodes transiting the 5th and the 11th houses are typically a positive thing. You can have a lot of really positive, fun, new experiences that come about during this time. I actually had one client too who, like, the 5th house rules politicians. And so it was the reversal of this. She had the North Node in the 5th house, but she got into politics for the first and only time in her life. And it was like she won, the seat in her city council or whatever it was. And, it all went well, but it was like a lot of ups and downs and a lot of ambivalence toward it. And that's a very North Node in the 5th house thing. And also a North Node in the 11th house thing. You might be connecting with these new groups of people, and you might be a part of a new organization, or you might even create a new organization or do something new through social media or through the internet, and it might be really exciting. It might work, it might develop into something great, but it might be too much. It might be over the top, and there might be a lot of ups and downs, and so that's something to keep in mind as well. The full moon is happening in your 4th house, which is the house of home, family, property, your place of living. So this is, where you're going to be focusing a little less on work and being out there in the world and what's going on with your career. And you're going to be shifting your focus to what's going on behind the scenes, behind closed doors. This is a great week to connect with your family. This is a great week to do something related to a home or a home renovation project, or this could be where there is like a development with your home, your property, that sort of comes to fruition that you've been working on for quite some time. And so especially related to maybe some sort of financial issue that's been kind of clouding your mind, where you haven't had a lot of clarity around it. If you sit with it intuitively, especially if it's related to like financing for a home or your rent, or joint finances through marriage, and how that relates to your property or property ownership, or maybe even something about inheritance with your family, now's a time where you can get a lot of clarity, and you can see very clearly where this is leading and what opportunities might arise, or how to resolve the situation. All right, and then for Virgo and for Virgo rising, This energy with the North and South Node is happening in your, let's see here, your 10th house of career and public reputation, and also down in your 4th house of the home and family. Now's a time where you're going to be focusing a little bit less on the needs of your family, on what's going on at home, and you're going to be focusing very intensely on developing your career and making a name for yourself. You can have huge successes that come during this time to the point where it's overwhelming, and you can feel very excited but also very scared about the developments that are coming. And when it comes to your career, it's like, this is exciting, this is new, this is like a lot of really extreme growth, or me moving into a whole new direction in my career that I've never even thought of before. And so it's exciting, but it's also scary because you've never done it, and it's going to be new to you. So you're kind of in uncharted territory over the next year and a half when it comes to your career. And again, this is not a forecast just for this week. This is for 18 months. And so that's part of this energy. You're going to be focusing a little less on home, family, property. It's not going to be as important to you. There can be challenges or issues related to your home, or old karma, old baggage related to your family or your upbringing that could come up around this time that you have to deal with. But this could also bring like old family connections back into your reality. So maybe people that you've lost touch with that can come back around, things of that nature. And this can also bring changes in your place of living and things like that too. So a lot of times this is associated with a move and having to let go of like a place of living that has served you really well, that felt really comfortable, but it's just not satisfying to you anymore. And that can be a big theme over the next year and a half as well. The full moon is happening in your 3rd house, which is the house of communication. It's the house of really collaborating and connecting with other people. I think this is a time where you're going to have really good emotional connections, where you're going to be sharing some deep truths with people who you care about really, really deeply. Not to use the same word twice, I guess, but people who you're really close with, who you're really connected to. This is a great time to share your thoughts, feelings, emotions, to connect on this like supportive emotional level, or you might provide that compassionate emotional support for somebody who you care about. But this is going to show you who you can trust to share these things with, who's loyal, who's supportive, who's going to be that person in your life, and maybe who's not. So that's going to become very clear to you later this week. And then for Libra and for Libra rising, the North and South nodes are shifting into your 3rd and your 9th house. The 9th house is the house of education, especially higher educational pursuits. And so this is a time where you might have to change your mindset around something, your beliefs around something, or you might have opportunities to engage in some sort of higher education. If you're somebody who is sort of a master of your craft, this is a time where you might be thrown into teaching or public speaking or something along those lines, sharing information and wisdom that you've acquired through your experience in work. And so this is a time usually where there's a lot of energy around teaching, and maybe even writing and publishing, sharing wisdom that you've gained through your own personal experience. There can be some issues with communication, but there can also be some ideas and thoughts and communications and messages that come up that reveal things to you that you already kind of know, or that feel familiar, or that feel right to you. This could be a time where your relationships with your neighbors or your community might suffer, or you might be focusing less on that and focusing more on what's going on out in the bigger picture. This could be a time where even with, what's going on, travel opportunities can come to Libras, and you might feel very ambivalent about those opportunities, and it makes sense why, with what's going on globally. But in general, it might just be like, this is a great opportunity, I'm excited, but I'm kind of like nervous and scared. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to travel to this place. I don't know if I want to accept this opportunity. But usually if you do accept it, it kind of throws you in a whole new path and a whole new direction in your life in a very positive, very powerful way. It's like life-changing. So you might want to take hold of those things, even if you do feel kind of, ambivalent toward it. And so that's part of what's going on for you. And then the full moon is happening in your 2nd house, which is the house of finance. And so this could be a financial opportunity that comes to you. It could be something very creative that you've been working on when it comes to your work, or something that you've been visualizing for yourself when it comes to your work that manifests in a financial opportunity. This could be some financial opportunity that allows you to overcome debt, or that allows you to make up for maybe something involving your partner's resources, or that allows you to not rely so much on other people's resources. finances. This is a really great time for visualizing and intuiting which opportunities to take hold of financially and which ones to maybe let go of and not take hold of, or a good time for visualizing or doing some sort of ritual around money manifestation. And especially if that money manifestation is tied to your work, because that Neptunian energy is involved in your 6th house. And so this isn't something where it's like I'm manifesting piles of money falling from the sky. It's more like I'm visualizing what I want for myself with my career and what I want for myself financially as a result of that. All right. And then for Scorpio rising. So this north and south node shift is happening in your 2nd and in your 8th house. And so the 8th house is the house of joint finances. It's the house of finances that you sort of come into through marriage or through partnership in business. It's the house of debt, taxes, other people's money, inheritance. And usually, when the north node transits the 8th house, this is a time where if you are in partnership with other people, like if you're in a marriage partnership, then your partner can start to increase their resources. And so you benefit from that pretty heavily. And so you don't have to focus so much on creating your own resources, working so hard for a paycheck, because that's that south node area, right? That kind of takes care of itself, or that's not really as much of an area of focus. If you're focused on making money just to acquire piles of wealth, it's going to feel very unsatisfying and things are not going to work so well for you. You have to learn to rely on other people as a means of support, at least a little bit throughout this transit, or to feel more comfortable with that. This is a time where you might kind of overdo it when it comes to investments or acquiring debt or taking out new loans. And so you do want to be cautious about that. But for the most part, this usually creates growth and abundance through other people's resources. And so that this might be a good thing, even though it might be an unstable thing. And there might be some ups and downs. It could create some growth for you if that is an option. There could be issues involving inheritance, death, that type of thing that might come about over the next year and a half. And that might be a really prevalent energy for you. For some people, that's not going to be for everyone, obviously. Or it could even be just a time where you decide that you need to create a will, right? And this is like a big shift in your mindset where you're just thinking about your own mortality a lot more than you normally would be. And what's going to happen with your resources after death. A lot of financial ups and downs and shifts in your finances can come in really powerful but positive ways. It's like you're moving in a new direction. You're not worrying so much about the daily grind and like acquiring and amassing wealth. You're thinking about maybe investment opportunities. You're thinking maybe more along the lines of, okay, my partner's creating more resources. I can kick back a little bit and focus on things that I'm passionate about. This is also a time where a lot of fears and anxieties can come up in really powerful ways, but this can be very transformative for you. This is a period of really intense self-understanding. And so, there's a lot of potential here, but a lot of this is going to be financial change that's going to be coming for you. I don't know that it's necessarily a negative thing or a positive thing. It's kind of like a redistribution of wealth or where it's coming from or the way that you deal with wealth. So the last time this happened more recently to my husband, it was when the North Node was transiting his 8th house, which literally just happened, and the South Node in his 2nd house. And so, I made more money and he made a lot less money, and it balanced itself out. And, now that it's shifting, it's kind of changing. So just kind of, something to think about. It might create a better balance where, you're not working as hard, which is what happened with my husband, and, your partner's working harder, which is what happened with me. All right, and then that full moon energy. So the full moon in the sign of Scorpio is in your sign, and so this is a time where the spotlight might be on you. This is also a time where you might be doing something that's really joyful, that's really indulgent, that's really fun. This is a really great time to experience joy, romance, to engage in creative or spiritual passions, hobbies, interests and pursuits. This is a time where you've been focusing a lot on your relationship with other people, and you need to shift your focus to focus more on your own needs and your own self-interest. And so this is where it's time to take care of your needs, your emotional comfort zones. What do you want? So focusing a little bit more on you. My dogs are going crazy right now because they just dropped off a package of their food. So they must know. Anyway, so this is your time to shine. This is where the spotlight might be on you. You might also feel more energized, more passionate, more powerful throughout this time, and definitely a lot more psychic and a lot more intuitive throughout this time. And so this can all be, really, really positive. All right, for Sagittarius and for Sagittarius rising, this shift in the nodes is going to be happening in your 7th and in your 1st house. And so with the North Node shifting into your 7th house, there's going to be a lot of changes, I think, in your relationships. Powerful new relationships can show up in your life throughout this time. And so you can have new connections with people that feel very fated, feel very karmic, where you feel very drawn to a person or to a new partnership, maybe in business, maybe in friendship, or maybe in love. If you are in a relationship already, this is a time where your relationship might change, or you might become more focused on developing that relationship or changing it or taking it into a new direction. This is a time where you might need to make changes together as a couple, and where you might have a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns in your relationship. And so this can be a powerful time of transition. But again, a powerful time where new partnerships can come in that are really important to you as well. It's usually, if you're in a relationship, it's not that you're going to let go of it. That's like more of a South Node energy. Although it can be, both sides, it's usually kind of reinforcing or moving in a new direction in that partnership. The South Node on your ascendant and transiting through your 1st house is, things, you're letting go of a lot of who you were and who you thought you were and the directions that you thought you were heading into. It's less about your own personal will and what you want and your goals and directions in life, and more about how you can team up with other people to support them in their goals and in their aspirations, creating balance through partnership, right? And so if you focus too much on me, I need this, I want that, or if you have been focusing too much on your own needs and your own self-interest, you're going to be moving away from that. You're going to be looking at how you can support others in your life. And so, things will come in to kind of shift you in that direction in a very fated and powerful way, and your whole life will change direction during this time. Faded old kind of talents and situations and things like that from your past can come back around and can change your direction. And that can be part of it too. So reincorporating like old things back into your life, your old direction, your old goals, your old mindset around something can, be reinforced. And there could be some karmic changes coming for you. This full moon is happening in your 12th house. So this is a really important time for rest, contemplation, spending more time in solitude, seclusion, focusing on your spirituality, your spiritual well-being, that type of thing, and spending less time focusing on the busyness of day-to-day life. You've probably been very busy with all of this Taurus energy and have had a lot going on when it comes to your day-to-day routines, maybe focusing on cleaning up your health, maybe just a lot of busyness in your work, or a lot of change going on in your work because there's been that Uranus energy activated there. And now's a time where you can focus more on just resting, focus on your spiritual well-being, focus on those types of things. Really positive developments. You can get like a lot of clarity on issues involving your home and family this week, especially if you spend some time on your own. So this is a good time at the end of this week around Thursday to just kind of take a step back and spend some time in solitude. All right, and then for Capricorn and Capricorn rising, you finally have the South Node out of your sign. And so the changes and developments that have been going on involving your relationships, your own personal direction, your own autonomy, that type of thing, you're kind of shifting out of this phase. Whenever you have the North and South Node in your sign, or, the opposite sign, it's usually a time where your whole life changes over the course of a year and a half, where like your direction in life changes in some way. And so you're kind of done with that, and you're moving into this period where you're going to be focusing a little bit more on your work, on your health, on your day-to-day routine. It's going to be a very busy time where a lot of things will change for you, health-wise and work-wise, I would say. This is a time where you're going to be focusing more on how you can show up in service of other people. There can be new developments and growth when it comes to your employees if you have a business. Or if you're like somebody who manages people, while a lot of people are firing people, you might be hiring people. And so that could be a really positive experience as well. This is a time where you have to focus on like new ways of dealing with your health, or a new direction in dealing with the health of your body, your nutrition, that type of thing. And so you might have to change your mindset around that, or change something about, your day-to-day health regimens and routines. You're going to be focusing a little bit less on your internal reality or spiritual growth. That's something that will kind of come naturally to you, and there can be really positive positive developments in that area. But this is kind of more about how you're taking that and using that in real life instead of just kind of this contemplative spiritual, maybe woo-woo thing that you've been doing, or, maybe just philosophizing things. People who have Sagittarius in the 12th house, they do have usually really deep connections to spiritual philosophy. But, the practical application might not be there. And so this is more about the practical application of that and focusing in that direction. And bridging those two areas of life. This could bring some difficulties, sorrows, need to let go, involving things from your past, involving past karma and past life experiences. But this could also be, difficulties involving hospitals, prisons, ashrams, places that you kind of go to be in solitude, seclusion, rehabilitation centers, things like that. And this is you're going to be a lot busier. So it's kind of like you're being forced into the world right now, and that can be a little uncomfortable for you. The other thing too that's going on is, and you're probably like, oh, busier, like I need that with Saturn transiting your sign. Saturn will be leaving your sign, so it won't feel as challenged. Anyway, the full moon is happening in your 11th house, which is the house of friendship. It's the house of group connections. And this is in a really nice trine with Neptune in your 3rd house. This is a great time to connect with your friends, especially people who you feel very supported by, friends that feel like family, loyal, sort of really compassionate, supportive, trustworthy connections with groups of people, spiritual connections, maybe with like a group of like-minded people who have the same form of spirituality or spiritual practice, maybe doing something creative with a group of people, even if that has to be online. These can all be really powerful things that can come to you at the end of this week that can bring a lot of really important insight and clarity around maybe issues or things that you've been dealing with mentally that you have had blockages or fogginess around. All right, and then for Aquarius and for Aquarius rising, this energy with the shift of the nodes is happening in your 5th house. So the North Node in the 5th house is a great energy. I mentioned like the politics thing where maybe you could be moving into, the political sphere, being a politician or something like that. That's going to be for very few people, but some. But this is also a time where, first off, North Node in the 1st house or in the 5th house and eclipses in the 5th house can indicate pregnancy unexpectedly, like a fated sort of karmic situation that comes about where, pregnancy comes. Maybe you're somebody who didn't think that you could become pregnant or didn't want children, and then all of a sudden that becomes a potential for you. And so that can come about in a way that's really powerful, but you might feel kind of scared or ambivalent about it. But it's something fated, right? If you're not somebody who wants that, be careful, but with the North Nodes, you usually don't have much of a choice in the matter. But there can be fated changes in direction when it comes to your relationship with your children that you already have. Something could change with your dynamic with them. This is also you really coming into new hobbies, new interests, new things that you love to do because you're doing them by choice, because they're fun for you. And so you might discover a new hobby and you might just run with it because you feel so passionate and so excited about it. And that could be really fun and a really positive manifestation of this. This is also maybe a new fated romance, but it would be more like a fling than a long-term thing. And if you are somebody who's involved already, this could just be you amping up the passion, amping up the excitement, the play, the romance in your relationship, the flirtation, right, with that Gemini energy. This could be you pursuing a lot of new hobbies and interests and pursuits with that Gemini energy, splitting your time, deciding you want to do all sorts of different things. This could be a time also where you have to let go of certain people in your life, involving, group connections, group relationships, things like that, over the next 18 months. But this is also a time where fated sort of karmic connections with groups of people and new friends, where these people feel familiar to you already, even though you don't already know them, that can come about for you. And so that could be a powerful thing as well. So it can kind of go both ways. So you'll probably be letting go of certain friendships and group connections that are past their expiration date, where it's like you've already lived out the karma that you needed to live out through this experience. You already kind of cleared up the karma in those connections, and now it's time to move on. And then old connections will come back in that'll feel faded, and they might be friendships that stick with you, or they just might be coming in for this 18-month period of time, or some little snippet of this 18-month period of time. So you can clear up karma from the past, and you can move on to something else, and you don't have to, continue on with these cycles and repetitive patterns with these people, these souls, in future lifetimes. And so that that's something that can come up as well. But you can definitely connect with groups of people and new friends that feel really familiar, and these can be very fated, powerful, positive connections that do help to propel you in a new direction. All right. And then finally, for Pisces and for Pisces rising. So for you guys, this North and South Node energy is shifting into your 4th house, which is the house of home, family, property, and the 10th house of career and public reputation. This is a time where a lot of people move. So this is about figuring out what you want to come home to. Career and all of that is going to be less of a focal point. You might even like lose a job or let go of a certain career path intentionally in favor of having more time to spend at home with your family, focusing on the things that matter, laying down roots. It could even be because you add an addition to the family, like a child, or maybe you have to care for a parent or something like that. Maybe not the case so much in terms of it being a burden or responsibility, but you could be maybe taking in extended family members into your home with the sign of Gemini because maybe they've lost their job or they need a little assistance. You could be inviting new roommates into your home, that type of thing, and that could be part of this experience as well. But this is more about figuring out what you want to come home to, right? Are you bored being stuck at home? I would assume you would be, being a Gemini. I see you need a lot of excitement in your home life. You need to constantly be changing things up and doing new things and having a lot of good communication in your home. If you're somebody who lives alone, this would be actually a good time for you to think about getting a roommate, getting a pet, inviting family members to live with you, that type of thing. Just because that Gemini energy needs socialization and it needs a sense of community within your home environment. And so that's something that you might start thinking about, and that might actually feel good to you. You might very literally change your location over the next 18 months or sometime over the next 18 months. And it could be related to a job or a loss of a job, or it's sort of a new career pursuit. That could be part of this energy, or you might lose a job due to you wanting to relocate, and then you have to kind of start fresh in that area and find a new career path or find a new employer. This could be you literally just trying to find a better balance. I mean, this is the main takeaway of this, is like finding a better balance between work, career, what you're doing out in the world, and your home life, right? What do you want to come home to? What do you want that to look like? Because that's going to be hugely important for you, especially in the kind of social climate that we're in right now, where you might be stuck at home more and you might already start thinking about these things prior to this transit even beginning right now. The other thing that's going on is that there's a full moon happening in the 9th house, which is the house of higher educational pursuits. It's the house of gaining perspective. And so this is where you might gain a newfound perspective on something that's been clouding your judgment, or something that has been unclear to you, especially about your personal path or direction in life. And so some fogginess or confusion about who you are, what you're here to do, identity confusion can be cleared up. You might actually get that sense of perspective. You might be able to take a step back. This is a great time where you might have some sort of peak or some sort of opportunity or some sort of manifestation that comes about related to an educational pursuit, and maybe a culmination point of your education. Maybe you're having your final exams this week or something like that, which it's about that time or almost that time for a lot of people. And so it's kind of like it's the culmination of this educational pursuit, and you're seeing the manifestation, you're seeing results, and things should actually go quite well for you if that is the case for you if you're a Pisces rising. This could be travel opportunities coming about for you, but maybe they're not going to be necessarily something that's going to happen right now, but maybe something into the future. And definitely focusing less on day-to-day task-oriented mental pursuits and piecemeal types of things, and focusing more on the bigger picture. Like, what has meaning to you in life? What do you value in terms of like your moral and ethical value systems, your belief systems about God, the universe, the world around you, and how does that contribute to the bigger picture of who you are and what your goals are, what your direction is in life. And maybe, taking a look at this could even be like a culmination point of a teaching pursuit or something like that, where you are coming out as a teacher, or you are sharing some sort of important information. Maybe this is like your first webinar, or even if it's not your first, maybe this is like you're teaching a class online and it goes really well for you, and you're getting recognized for your abilities as a teacher and your abilities to really share your wisdom and your experience with other people in a way that is very valuable and very deep, and provides like a deeper type of insight and understanding than people might even be used to. And so this can all be really good, really positive. I like the energy for you guys, Pisces. There definitely are some changes coming up for you in the next couple of years. But I think those things are going to be inherently positive, especially for your development with your home and your family life. And I love the full moon energy for you. I think you're going to experience this in a very positive way as well. And so that is my forecast for all 12 signs. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel so you never miss one of my videos, and share this with your friends if you think they're going to be interested, or if you think that they can benefit from the information and the insight that I provided for you guys this week, because that's always good to do. All right, so thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.